I just got home from Rome. While in Rome, I thought it would be cool to find a plant and transplant it into an item that fit the vibe of the trip. I knew from the get-go I couldn't bring the plants back home on the plane, so I was gonna have to figure out who I was going to give them to when I left. With the help of my awesome friends Frank and Layla, I explored Rome and got to see some iconic local Italian plants along the way. My plant mission started by catching the subway. We were pretty much zombies, having spent the last few days at a wedding in Tuscany. I did get to see plenty of the famous Italian cypress and olive trees that the Tuscany region is known for. Our first stop in Rome was the Trevi Fountain. It was alright, but I was more intrigued by this decades-old olive tree growing in a giant plastic pot nearby. We passed by this pristine courtyard garden and briefly checked out the Colosseum. The iconic Italian stone pines of Rome more than lived up to my expectations. They look like almost giant umbrellas. There wasn't much planter potential in ancient Rome, so we headed out for better options. What kind of plant is this?
This is a ficus, or also called a rubber.
This thing's giant. This ficus tree was huge. I had only seen them as indoor houseplants. This is just growing out. It's growing out of the hole. That's so rad. We walked down into an underground mercatino. You ready, Layla? It was basically a massive thrift store. This place was awesome. Unique and vintage items were everywhere. My favorite was probably this old orange Philips television. I tried on this sweet feather mask. How do I look?
Great.
And Layla added crazing to my vocabulary.
So it's kind of cracked.
It's not cracked. It's just crazy on the.
Oh.
It's crazy on the. What do you call it?
Ceramic or?
No, what do you call it? I can't. I'm not.
There was a ton of interesting stuff that would make great planners, and the ideas were flowing. The coffee percolators caught my eye.
I think this is gonna be the one. Do you know how many espressos we've been drinking?
The coffee in Italy was fantastic. Frank was the man. He made coffee multiple times a day to keep us energized.
And you have some nice espresso.
It made total sense to put a plant in a coffee percolator.
Whether this one or this one, what do you think?
I think this one because it's got, interesting colorway.
Yeah.
This is the one. I'm gonna do that. Layla decided to make a second trip around the store. I took that time to look for another item to transplant into. I could put a plant in this shoe. Yeah? Put a plant in the shoe? I don't know. It's just a shoe. I do a plant in the shoe. The shoe was made by Wade, whoever Wade was, in 1973. Isn't that crazy? Thanks, Wade. Wade's shoe was going to be a plant's new home. For the plants, I found a little outdoor spot connected to a convenience store. They had a diverse selection of succulents, houseplants, and even some fruit trees. I chose a Coleus and a Wax Begonia, both of which I've never had in my collection. I picked up this grocery advertisement off the street to use to transplant on. I pulled the plants out and decided the Coleus would go best into the percolator. The percolator has a spout in the middle where the espresso pours out, and the volume of the percolator was less than the container the Coleus came in. Because of this, I had to break down the root ball to make it fit inside. Usually I would use a water bath to gently break away the soil, but that would be messy and I was short on time because, well, it was my last day in Rome. I wasn't able to drill a drainage hole in the percolator due to a lack of equipment. If for some reason it does overflow, some water would drain into the lower portion of the percolator. After placing the Coleus where I wanted, I packed soil around it. The soil seemed like straight cocoa core. It was very light. I really liked how the percolator turned out, and you'll get a better look at it soon. My apologies to Wade for changing the integrity of his piece, but I wanted to at least attempt to put a drainage hole in the shoe. I didn't want to use something from where we were staying to make the hole, so I opted for a pop tab on this Coca-Cola can. This is thicker than I thought it would be already. It took a while, but worked. Oh, look, through. I figured one hole would do in the front of the shoe, and that should be fine. Since the hole in the top of the boot was so small, I definitely had to shrink down the Wax Begonia root ball to make it fit inside. I filled the front of the shoe with soil ahead of time, and then put the begonia inside. Next, I gently packed soil around the base of the plant. Wade's boot and the percolator both looked awesome. I was really happy with how they turned out. Now it was time for the hard part, figuring out who I was going to give them to before I left the next morning. In the middle of the building we stayed at, there was a shared courtyard garden. Running low on time, I decided to gift them to a random person living in the building. I wrote a message in English and did my best to translate it to Italian. I really hope it was legible. At 4:30 in the morning, it was time to head out and bring the plants down. I was very quiet because nobody was awake. I put the letter down next to the plants for their new owner to find and quietly slipped out the door.